Hello and welcome to the Leadership Roots podcast with me, Mark Redmond. In this podcast, I explore what great leadership looks like and feels like. And I have conversations with a diverse range of leaders, exploring with them their leadership journey, the challenges they overcame, the opportunities they seized, who supported them on the way, and advice they would have for future leaders. I'll also share insights I've picked up working as a leadership coach. My guest today is one of Ireland's most accomplished and experienced corporate leaders. She has had a transformative impact on a number of sectors, including telecommunications and technology. She was the first woman to be appointed as Chief Executive of AIR, the telecommunications giant. She has served as non-executive director on a number of boards. She is a passionate advocate for equality and sustainability, a patron of Special Olympics Ireland, and for the past 4 years, she has led Salesforce Ireland. Carolan Lennon, you are most welcome to the Leadership Roots podcast.
Thank you, Mark. Delighted to be here.
Great to have you here, Carolan. And I have to say, the Salesforce Tower, it's now an iconic site on Dublin skyline, and I think it speaks to Dublin being an international capital. Can you tell us about the people that work there and the impact they have?
Yeah, so it is an amazing building. It's a place that our employees want to come. We're one of the best attended buildings, in the Salesforce group. Our customers want to use it. As you know, we have 2 Ohana floors, Ohana being the Hawaiian word for family, that we make available to local community groups and not-for-profits. And there, loads of requests. We've had Special Olympics in, we've had local, the National College of Ireland. So it's an amazing resource. Like Salesforce does not want to have, a fancy building where nobody locally feels welcome, or they look at it and think, I couldn't be a part of that. And that is the idea of those Ohana floors. There's a real sense of diversity and inclusion and energy, and our high velocity sales, or our sort of small business sales for all of EMEA is led out of Dublin. And we also everyone gets a face-to-face onboarding across EMEA, and that also is done out of Dublin, as well as a lot of leadership training. We've got high programs for high potential females, the lead programs, and again, they're done out of Dublin. And I suppose what people say about Dublin is that we are the keepers and the amplifiers of both culture and knowledge for Salesforce worldwide. And people, they get their training in Dublin, they learn about the Salesforce culture, they experience it, and then maybe they take it back to France or Spain or to the US or, wherever their Salesforce career journey takes them.
That must give you great satisfaction as a great advocate for equality.
Yeah, I think that's really important to us, and that's equality is a Salesforce value. So those values are strong, and it's interesting. Sometimes you go into a company and you see the picture of the values on the wall, but nobody really knows them or certainly lives them and breathes them. And one of the reasons why I joined Salesforce from the telecoms was everybody I met on that whole interview process, which is long. Everybody talked about the values, and it was in them. It was inherent, So I thought, well, actually, that could be a good fit for me because, I would consider myself a values-based leader. I really, I do think, if you're true to those values, and, equality has always been a big one for me, and you always hold yourself in that way and behave like that in the good times and the bad times. Like, I'm a real believer in, consistent, calm leadership, that phrase of this too will pass. The good times pass and the bad times pass.
And I think what you said there about staying true to your values, both in good times and challenging times, it's a really important insight. And I'd love you now to maybe give guidance to a future leader out there who's listening or watching this podcast. And if you could share, how did you challenge yourself, or how were you challenged to stay true to your values during the challenging times?
Yes, I'll give you an example. So I was the consumer director in Vodafone. So, pretty senior role, successful time there. I was only 10 years there. And I left to go and work in Eircom at the time, Air Now. And I joined in late 2010. And in early 2012, we were in the largest examinership in Irish corporate history. I think still the largest examinership. And I think it was the biggest debt restructuring in Europe that year. So you're pretty new. And, we've got this news that we're going into examinership. So you're not the most knowledgeable person about ERCOM. You're not the most experienced. You're only there 14, whatever. But you've got to lead the team kind of through that. And me and my team wrote the bill for the consumer part of the business that was approved by the examiner. So that was a pretty key part of the approval process, because consumer was, and out of that we came out with a plan to roll out broadband, to launch TV, to expand the mobile network. Like, there were incredible things that had to be, delivered post that. So in that, it was about, leading from the front, putting the work in, looking under every stone, supporting the team, that calmness of, actually this is really hard now, but the outcome could be really good for us, because we should have debt that's manageable, and we should have a plan that if we deliver, we'll see the company true to its future. And also, because telecoms infrastructure was so important to Ireland, it was, the option of that failing was not, something that was going to rest easy with anybody. So I think it was that, showing up every day, same mindset, same calmness, same consistency, same mentality, doing the work, bringing the team. And I probably learned, so much about myself during that process. Like, nothing like a process like that to show your leadership mettle, but also to show how good the team are. And you would see people who really leaned into that and were happy to, put their shoulder to the wheel and roll up their sleeves. I definitely felt I enhanced my reputation in Air during that time as well, because, as I said, I was relatively new. I could have maybe took up more of a step back, but I didn't. I really lent in, and obviously that plan was approved for the examiner, and we went on to build out broadband, and we went on to roll out TV and do all the things that were in that plan that was approved or whatever. So you might have said that my research wasn't too good, that I was only there 12 months or 14 months and I was in the largest examinership in corporate history. But yeah, that was a very testing time from a leadership point of view.
But I think your journey is defined by you backing yourself at those moments of crisis stroke opportunity. And I want to come back to another one in a moment, but on this one, take us back into it. What did you draw on to sustain you through it? And what learning, you said you got a lot of learnings from it. What learnings from that time do you still apply today?
I suppose from a practical point of view, I'd left, a pretty successful career in Vodafone, and because I wanted to stay in Ireland. So the one thing I did my Leaving Cert when I was 17, and I went into UCD, and I didn't know what way was up. But I decided to do a degree in technology and maths because I thought that was my best chance of getting a job in Ireland in the 80s. The only really consistent part of my entire plan was that I wanted to build a career in Ireland. I feel very Irish. I feel very, connected to Ireland, and that's what I wanted to do. And everything else, just it kind of happened. But that was probably the one kind of North Star. So I felt I'd gone as far as I could in Vodafone, and I committed to Air and the turnaround. But that was a big step because I was doing pretty well in Vodafone. I've been there 10 years. So I was kind of invested, and I had backed myself to go in and do this. So, okay, 14 months in or 12 months, whatever, this comes at you. So what are you going to do now? You're going to run, you're going to sink, or you're going to swim. So, I think you're in now, you're committed. We're going to do this. It's a funny process, examinership, because you have to look under every stone. You have to understand everything. So it's kind of like, almost like a fast track MBA or whatever. So in some ways that was kind of also good for me because, I probably learned things or got my head around things quicker than I might have done through the general sort of process. And I kind of got energized by that. And I could see the plan as it was starting to come together. I could see it. And I could see that I felt that numbers could work for us, post the plan as the commercials came together. My biggest worry would be all the things we had to deliver, in terms of the rollouts of everything, and would we be able to get all that done? Because we didn't have, we had a couple of years to make this plan work. We didn't have 10 years or whatever. But I think as we worked through it, I got confidence that I could see the numbers. It was making sense. The plan was coming together. The team got behind me, I think, because I was, I was very present, with them all the time, and we worked it through. And I get a lot of energy from that. I'm good at getting people aligned around a common goal. And my old boss at Air used to say, he couldn't get people who did work for him aligned around a goal, and I could get people who didn't work for me aligned around one. So I'm good at painting the picture of this is what we're trying to do here, and let's see if we can do it. And as the process went on, it became clear to me that we could do it, and we could produce a plan that would be approved. And I certainly got energy and great satisfaction out of that when it was done. And as I said, I think it absolutely helped my credentials in AIR. Certainly helped me to know the business better, and I think it led then on to probably maybe an accelerated route up to the top team, because like I think Vodafone had 1,500 people. I was there when I went to AIR, there was 10,000. So I was senior, but I wasn't at the top table then. But a year or so after examinership, I was.
Wow, there's so much in that now that I want to chat with you about. I love the fact you're visualizing success, and you often hear about this from folks in sport, but less so in business. But you visualize success, which I love, right? But your self-belief also sustained you. And in my coaching practice, I can't tell you the number of people that I work with, and this one isn't gender specific, right? Who suffer from imposter syndrome, who doubt themselves, that inner critic voice going on all the time. That does not seem to be an issue for you, Carolan. What's your secret?
I suppose, but I think it may be situational if you think about it. Like an examinership process can last from 50 to 100 days. I mean, there isn't really a lot of time for navel gazing or doubting. In some ways, we're going to get this plan done and improved, or we're not. In a way, so I'm actually quite good in those scenarios because I don't panic. I stay pretty calm, and as I work my way through the solution, I can see it. Then we're on the right track. I can see this, and we went through the plan with loads of people, but you start to understand, oh, actually this could work now, this could be right or whatever. So I think, there was a deadline, we had to do it. Like, what was I going to do? Say, well, that was a bad move and I didn't lean into the examinership and I didn't give it everything I had or whatever, and no, in the middle of it, don't get me wrong, I wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, this is an amazing learning experience. I wasn't. I was doing the work with the team and I really wanted it to be successful because I suppose I wanted to be successful. I'd made that move to AIR. And I thought that would, be a great vehicle for growing a career in Ireland. So I kind of was invested in making it work for me. And then I was invested in making it work for AIR. And, we had a deadline where we had to get a piece of work done. But it helped me then. And again, I could say it was very strategic. I knew it was going to help me a lot. I didn't. But when I came through it with the outcome that we got, it definitely helped me in terms of my understanding and my trajectory in AIR. There's no doubt about that.
If you were coaching someone who does suffer from imposter syndrome, or someone in a corporate setting does suffer from that, does have that nagging voice, what advice would you give them to get over that?
I suppose I've never found a problem in a way that I think you can't work your way through. So I think there is a little bit about that of, okay, what do we need to get done here? What do I need to achieve here? And kind of breaking that down and saying, if I can see my way to getting that done, I have kind of nothing to worry about, in terms of, because there's a little bit, I think, of overthinking some of these things or whatever, so it is, okay, yeah, I'm in this role. Maybe I feel, oh my God, but I've got to, move that from A to B. And if I can see a way to move it from A to B, you know what, I'm doing this role. So I think there is confidence between, knocking those, those milestones off. And I think as well, people, you never see progress in the middle of it. And people who doubt themselves, I think, they never look back. So sometimes I will look back and reflect and go, actually, we've moved that quite a way now, and I will go, okay. And, because in the middle of it, you don't see it. And then people start doubting themselves and they go into those spirals or whatever. But sometimes just, take a time and look back and see how much progress you've made, how close you are to, a longer term solution than you were when you started or whatever. So I think there is a little bit about that, of giving yourself the time, the space to kind of look back and admire that you've actually moved the solution on or fix the problem somewhat, and work your way through it. I do think a little bit more, sometimes maybe a little bit more action, not that we shouldn't reflect, we should, but I just think sometimes people get over reflective. I think, people can second guess themselves too much maybe and maybe overthink it a little bit.
And celebrate your successes too, I think you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
So it's so important.
Yeah.
One of the things I do with my clients at the start of the journey is I ask them to record 3 achievements in their career to date. So many of them struggle because they don't do themselves justice. You seem to be somebody who draws a lot of confidence from within. But I'd love to hear, who have been your sponsors over your journey, Carolan? Who have been your mentors and how do they help? The
first person that had a real impact on my life and career was she was the first woman, the CEO or female to run Vodafone. Her name was Teresa Elder, she's an American lady, and she gave me my break. Gave me my first C-suite appointment. She made me the marketing director in Vodafone. She said to me, and I give this advice to lots of people, so apologies if you've heard it before, but if you try to get balance in your life every day, you'll fail at everything, or you'll certainly feel like you're failing at everything. So accept that some days it's all about work. It just is. As long as other days it's all about the family, and hopefully some days it's all about yourself. And look for equilibrium in the round. Like, look for balance in the round. Like, check in with yourself. Am I in or out of balance in terms of how much time I'm putting into myself or the family or work or whatever? And that was incredible advice. And I do that constantly with myself. And if I am out of equilibrium, I check in with myself and I make a plan to get myself back to balance or whatever. And that's really, that's just really helped me over the years, because I had 2 kids and I went on to have another child, but just in terms of managing all that, it's great advice. And she was a great mentor of mine. But in fairness, not just her, that was my first real experience of someone really feeling like they had your back and they were investing in you. But one of the things I had underestimated about joining Air was, see, Vodafone's very connected to Vodafone Group, whereas Air was connected to Ireland Inc. I hadn't realised like how connected the directors were, and we had a very good board. But 3 or 4 of the 2 of the chairmen, 3 or 4 of the members of that board over the time there were sponsors of mine. One of them, Ned Sullivan, it was the first chair when I was there. There was a program going where you could they were asking chairmen to bring a high potential female into a program. And so I got mentored by another chairman, and Ned nominated me to do that. And I think that's raised my exposure in terms of boards and non-executive directors or whatever, because you were starting to mingle with these people or whatever. So they were all fantastic. And I've never in my career asked one person to sponsor me or help me out or mentor me or for advice that they've turned me down. And I think people seem to be reluctant to ask, but my experience is actually genuinely people like to help if they can, So I've had a lot of support from the Air Board, great initial support from Teresa. It's been a hugely beneficial process for me.
And really important to your success, right?
Huge.
And again, Teresa, that was a gift she gave you at that stage, which I'm sure you've always been grateful for, but not least when you're leading a team whose company is headquartered on the west coast of the United States, and the pressures that brings, right? Yeah. But Carolan, it speaks, I think, to, and you're right, we all suffer from moments when, you have to crank open the laptop late at night or be available. Yeah. But the issue is not making that a habit, and the issue is self-care. Yeah. And just taking that time out to check in on yourself. Right?
Yes. And sometimes, it is about the project, and it is about getting the project done. Yeah. And actually, you're going to feel much better once the project is done. As long as then you take a breath and, reset and readjust or whatever. I just felt it was really it's kind of simple, I know, but it's really useful. And I constantly check in with myself in terms of where I'm at. Am I in equilibrium or am I not?
And I love that, taking your breath. We all need to take a breath, right? You also used a phrase which I love. You said, as leaders or as aspiring leaders, we should ask for what we need. We shouldn't be shy about asking for what we need. Can you share with us some advice you'd give to aspiring leaders on their journey when it comes to a sponsor or a mentor? What questions should they ask themselves in asking a potential sponsor or mentor to fulfill that role?
Yes, so I think you need to think about what do you look for. So for me, I would say the sponsor is the person who talks about you when you're not in the room, in terms of whatever. Whereas a mentor can be different. I think it's a little bit more detached in terms of your mentor may not be in the room, if you know what I mean. Whereas the sponsor, so I think you need to think about what are you actually looking for. What's the support you need? Do you need a mentor or do you need a sponsor? I also think in all these relationships, fit is important. So and for both sides, don't be afraid if the fit isn't there, if the connection isn't there. I think people feel a bit worried about that. I've asked someone to sponsor me or be my mentor, and we spend some time together, and just the connection just isn't right, and it's not their fault, it's not your fault, it's just the way it is. And I think these relationships really work if the connections are there. So don't be afraid to say, actually, maybe we're just not the right partnership for each other. and to change it as well. I often hear people saying, "Oh, I tried mentoring, it didn't really work," and then you go, "Well, how come?" Well, I don't think we reconnected, and then they stuck at it for longer than they should have done, rather than getting to go meet someone else or whatever. So I think being very deliberate about it, what you're actually looking for, is it a mentor or is it a sponsor, and then making sure the connection with the person is right. I mean, I think for me they're key. I was lucky to across my aircom time, whatever. And in Vodafone, were very good when they appointed people to C-suite. If you would like access to a coach, they would always support you in that. I was one of the few people that took them up on that, which again always surprised me. I just feel, why would somebody not, take someone up on that? So I had a coach all through my time in Vodafone, and I also continued with that coaching all through my time in Air. And again, I found that's so helpful, because what I find with a coach, what I got out of the coach was, Brian was my coach, he would always keep me focused on my North Star. So I would get distracted in terms of trying to do my day job or what, which I have to do my day job. That's what I get paid for. But you know what I mean? But I decided I wanted to be the CEO of Air. That was my ambition. And I knew there were things I needed to get to that. And we would come up with a rough plan for them, the things we needed to do, blah, blah, blah. But then I'd get into doing the day job, and but he would always keep them on our agenda. And maybe they didn't happen in the timeline we'd agreed at, because life gets in the way and work got in the way or whatever. But they did happen. And he would always bring me back to that, and pull me back out of the day-to-day and whatever, and say, well, that's the goal. Now, where are we with this or whatever? And so I found that really useful, just someone who just kept me on that track, whereas I was just running around trying to solve problems and, fix things.
I think it's so important, right?
Yeah.
Because, leaders today, one of the big challenges they face is just getting the time to think strategically about themselves, their teams and their organization. And often you hear from leaders that if they're in a coaching environment, that 1 hour or whatever it is actually the opportunity to think strategically with someone in your corner, a trusted advisor. And
even the thing of writing it down and coming up with a high level plan, and it's just it's kind of a piece of paper that keeps you honest, or keeps you, or have I changed my mind? Is that not what I wanted? Or did I just come up with this wish list at the start of this process? All those kind of things. I think there is just something very powerful in that. It certainly was hugely helpful for me. And, we were together a long. Now, some people say, oh, you shouldn't have a coach as long as I had. I disagree, because Brian knew me inside out. And also then over the years, he'd know the characters that I interacted with, and he'd know my response to character A versus my response to character B. And he would say, talk to me about, well, maybe we could think about that differently or whatever. So, while not in my day-to-day world, enough knowledge of that day-to-day world, I think, to help me and to keep, things on track. So, yeah, it was very valuable.
Brilliant support. Yeah. And again, it's like a variation of taking the breaths.
Yeah.
It's pausing.
Yeah.
And almost standing back from yourself.
Yeah.
And seeing what's going on right now.
Yeah.
What do I really want, actually? Am I happy where I am?
Yeah.
All that. Carolan, I want to focus on you as a champion for equality, right? And the example you set, becoming the first woman to be appointed as chief executive of Air. So many women leaders talk about having to work harder, having to battle against, barriers that men don't face. I'm not sure if you face that, but what I'd love to hear from you is, what's your challenge to chief executives to ensure by their actions, not just by their words, but by their actions, they're ensuring that there's equality of opportunity for future women leaders?
We can change things. So when I became the CEO of Air, we went from having 90-10, male, female senior leadership team to 50-50. So, you can take action. There's challenges with being a leader, but there's also amazing benefits in that you can make things happen. You can make decisions. You can change things. You can, I set up the Women's Network in Air. She leads. I was pretty senior when I did it, but I continued to sponsor it when I became the chief executive. I took on the role of a patron for Special Olympics for Air, because I was very interested in that or whatever. So, you can do things. And, and I think the question you need to ask yourself is, why aren't you doing the things? Because lots of other people would love to be able to do some of those things, but they never, unfortunately, are in the position where they can, So I think, it's up to all of us to, we know what good looks like and we know what the right thing to do is, so why don't we, when we have the power to do it, we should do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Amy, I think what you're also saying to us is frame this as an exciting opportunity, not as a box to be ticked to satisfy a requirement.
Yeah.
A really great opportunity. I want to now bring you to another big decision you made in your journey. You had the exciting appointment to lead Salesforce Ireland at an incredible time in their evolution and great ambition, right? But you've spoken about underestimating the complexity of the way a West Coast multinational is structured. Reporting lines aren't as clear-cut as they might be. And in the first few days or weeks maybe, you just needed, as you said yourself, I had to find out how things work around here. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it felt very uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. I think I was, so when I decided I wanted to leave Air, I was interested to do another executive role, but I had a few criteria for myself. I'm very good at understanding what I don't want to do, but I wasn't going to work in another telco. I wanted to work in a different model if I could. I'd come from private equity telco, so I wanted to do something different because I wanted to see if your leadership skills are transferable or not, and so it was important to me. And Salesforce, it was a completely different model. I loved the values. I really liked the people I met. As part of my interview process, I've said this before, but I think it was like I was on my 5th interview before I was interviewed by a man, which I thought was deliberate on their behalf. They really lined up these amazing women for me to meet, so I was excited about that. But I had thought about, well, what's this going to be like? What's going to be my challenge? And I thought the challenge was going to be the industry. I'd been 25 years in telco by then, so I kind of knew it pretty well. I was going into this new industry, this tech industry. Oh my God, I was going to have to learn all this and whatever. And I completely underestimated the difficult. So that was challenging, but anyone could do that. You just put your head down, you learn the stuff or whatever, and you don't have to be the absolute expert either. But so that was that was good. And you also, I reminded me that learning new things is good for your brain, and that's actually good for you. But the understanding how the model works, how to get stuff done, how to have an impact, I completely underestimated that. And in the first, no, it's months, it wasn't even weeks, I was like trying to figure out who does what around here, how do I get anything done. I remember saying to my husband, going, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make any difference around here because I'm struggling to figure it out. And I suppose if you think about it, it was naive of me not to recognise that in advance. Like, I'd come from being the CEO, I'd been in there 12 years. I had come from being the CEO, 3,500 people. Like, all the top leaders, I knew them all. They were all in my phone book or whatever. If we needed to figure anything out, we would just text each other and get together and like toss it around or whatever. And there I was in a company that was nearly, I think, 80,000 at the time, in a matrix and headquartered or whatever, in a new industry. So, of course, that was going to be completely different. So, yeah, I found that very challenging and at the time in terms of trying to figure that out.
And if you were coaching someone who was landed in that situation today, what's your key learnings? What's your advice to them?
I think you just have to stick at it. I think the thing is, recognise it. So know it's going to happen. I underestimated. So I was a bit like rabbit in the headlights a little bit because I had underestimated the impact. So I think know going in, particularly if you've come from a completely different model, know going in it's going to be like that. Yeah. And just kind of, again, take a breath and sort of breathe into it. And people are very, very helpful and you will figure it out. But just go with it. And people will help you. But I think just be eyes wide open, be aware of it. It's not you. Like, it happens to everybody. And you will figure your way through it,
We're coming to the end of a great conversation, and we're also chatting at another moment when you're backing yourself and you're moving on to new challenges as your 4 years of leadership at Salesforce Ireland comes to an end. What are you bringing with you from those 4 years? What are the real standout learnings for you?
So I think that leadership skills are transferable. I think I think I was able to have an impact, to stay true to my values, to be the leader that I've always been, in Air and Vodafone and in Salesforce. I was able to be that leader in Salesforce, and I think and make a difference and have an impact. So it's nice to know that it's business model agnostic in terms of those kind of skills or whatever. So that's been really interesting. I think it's been fascinating to see how, these big company like Salesforce kind of works, and, and like the thing that's really sort of blown my head off in terms of is the innovation there. We go, Mark pulls his senior leaders together 4 times a year. And the first time I went to that, and all our product people and engineering people spoke, and I was just kind of blown away by how smart they were and how innovative they were. And also for our size, like we're a super tanker, whatever, 80,000 or under 80,000 people, but we can turn like a speedboat if we want to, and that's incredible, So I wasn't expecting that, in terms of whatever, and to be in the middle of that and to see that, that was like wow, because in other organizations we were kind of buying in technology, or we were, whereas you see that innovation in front of your eyes and people coming up with these incredible things, and that was wow, mind blowing,
and an incredible legacy for you in terms of where you brought Salesforce Ireland. But it's now new pastures, and I have no doubt, Carolan, that amongst the people knocking on your doors, because you have served on a number of high-powered boards, I've no doubt they'll be queuing up to ask you to join more high-powered boards. And my final question, before I ask for a book recommendation, my final question is, you've seen both sides. You've been chief executive, you've been board member. What are you going to lean in on in terms of being a challenging but supportive board member to future chief executives?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I've been I was the senior independent director with AIB. I was on the board for AIB for 6 years, and I'm now on the board of Flutter. So I've had executive roles during all my board career to date, and it is quite different because you're trying to change your hat. You're not solving the problem. You're kind of asking the question. You're challenging, in a good supportive way. But you're also surrounded by amazing teams who know their business much better than you do. So it's trying to, add value in the right way, or not have people, running after another shiny ball, but because a Ned has had an idea or whatever. So it's really trying to think about where can you add value, where can you help or challenge in the right way, where might there be a blind spot, or where can you bring some some of your experiences. But it is tricky because it's amazing people in the bank, incredible people in Flutter, and and neither of those industries are my background either, so. But I think you do have lived experience of being a chief executive. You do learn a lot on the risk committee in AIB as well. You can, so I think you're trying to bring those skills out and figuring out where you can best, add some value and support the teams.
And I guess you also need to be mindful. You have got legal responsibilities to fulfill for stakeholders, shareholders,
very seriously. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
But I love, again, I think your point about asking the great questions. You don't have to. You're not going to force answers, but asking the great questions that a chief executive of good judgment will welcome. Carolan, it's been a great conversation. I'm going to wrap by asking you: is there a book you like that has been written by a leader, about a leader, or about leadership that you'd recommend?
So, and this is years ago, I read the book Good to Great, and again, I think it's back to the pragmatist in me. I love the practicality of that for me. Make the right people on the bus, making sure you have the right team. This idea of that working hard and that incremental improvement creates that flywheel, and then you have that kind of momentum. So it's not necessarily about the big flashy shiny strategies. It's about figuring out what we're really, really good at and working hard and kind of doing that well. And also in there they talk about a modest leader, a humble leader. I don't think you necessarily have to have those flashy kind of leaders or whatever. I do think there is something in that humble, resilient leader. So it's a long time since I read Good to Great, but I really liked it at the time. There was a load of things that kind of just struck me, and maybe it's just my style. I could relate to it, exactly what he was saying. Yeah.
Great recommendation. Yeah. I'm going to try and summarize my key takeaways from this great conversation. Sure. Right. First of all, love to hear that leadership skills are transferable. Very nice to hear on a Leadership Roots podcast. Secondly, back yourself, believe in yourself. Don't feel boxed in. Make those brave decisions. Thirdly, ask for what you need in terms of sponsors and mentors and coaches as well. But be true to your values on that journey. Speak up at those tables where decisions are being made. Don't leave it to somebody else to do that, right? And in times of crisis or in times of pressure, focus on the success story, focus on what we're about, get your milestones, and take your breaths and self-care. Carolan, thanks so much. So that is the end of this Leadership Roots podcast with me, Mark Redmond. It's been a great conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to rate it, review it, like it, repost it in all the usual places. If you want to reach out to me, you can get me at mark@redmondcoaching.ie, and you can find out the work I do at redmondcoaching.ie. So until the next time, stay safe and well. Bye.